Good morning, this is Omni View, episode 13, Balanced News Perspectives. Today is March 12th, 2026. We'll cover what happened, how different viewpoints frame it, so you can decide for yourself. Iran strikes oil tankers in the Gulf, surging prices to $100 a barrel amid escalating U.S.-Israel conflict. Let's dive right into that lead story. Iranian forces used explosive-laden boats to attack two oil tankers near Iraq's southern ports, setting them ablaze and sending thick smoke over Bahrain International Airport. This happened on the 13th day of the ongoing war involving the U.S., Israel, and Iran, with oil prices jumping to $100 a barrel as global markets reacted to the disruption and broader regional tensions. Former President Donald Trump has vowed to secure the Strait of Hormuz in response. Conservative outlets like Fox News are framing these strikes as blatant Iranian aggression that demands a robust U.S. military push to protect vital energy routes, highlighting Trump's commitments as a way to prevent Tehran from driving prices up to $200 a barrel and destabilizing the world. Mainstream sources such as NPR are focusing on the economic ripple effects and the intensifying clashes between Israel and Hezbollah, seeing this as part of a larger Middle East crisis that threatens global supply chains and energy security. Progressive perspectives emphasize the humanitarian and environmental dangers, pointing to the attacks as a tragic result of failed diplomacy that puts civilian lives and regional infrastructure at serious risk. What's interesting here is how these incidents could reshape energy dependencies worldwide. One question to consider is how sustained oil price hikes might impact everyday consumers and global economies in the coming months. Shifting now to another dimension of this conflict, bombing campaigns by the U.S. and Israel have reportedly damaged ancient Iranian heritage sites, including Tehran's Golestan Palace and Isfahan's Chehel Sotun Palace. The governor of Isfahan called it a declaration of war on a civilization, even though UNESCO had shared coordinates to help avoid such targets. Without independent verification, the full extent of the damage remains unclear, but it's raising alarms about cultural losses amid the warfare. Left-leaning sources, including The Guardian, are condemning this as cultural vandalism that ignores international norms and calls for accountability to safeguard global heritage, especially with UNESCO's efforts in play. Conservative viewpoints tend to downplay it as regrettable but unavoidable collateral in a defensive war against Iranian threats, insisting the strikes targeted military assets rather than history intentionally. International coverage weaves in expert concerns, noting how such damage could stoke anti-Western feelings and make future reconciliation even tougher in the region. The question nobody's asking enough is what evidence truly points to intentional versus accidental damage, and how that might affect long-term diplomatic ties with Iran. Meanwhile, there's a reported leadership shift in Iran that's adding fuel to the tensions. Mojtaba Khamenei, son of the former supreme leader, has taken power and is described in some reports as fixated on apocalyptic scenarios, potentially eager to escalate for regional dominance without fear of mass casualties. Details on his exact policies are hazy without official confirmation, but it's being portrayed as a pivotal change. This comes amid unverified claims about his influence on ongoing conflicts. Right-wing coverage, such as from the Mail Online, paints him as a fanatic whose end-times ideology could speed up Iran's nuclear pursuits, justifying preemptive U.S. moves to contain expansionism. Centrist analyses are examining how this internal shift might toughen Iran's stance against the West while rallying domestic support, according to sources like The Guardian. Progressive takes are alarmed by the potential human toll, critiquing depictions that dehumanize the leadership and pushing for dialogue to avoid ideology-driven escalations. What's worth pondering is how this change could influence Iran's nuclear program, especially with so much uncertainty around verified sources on his beliefs. On the military front, Iranian drone swarms are challenging U.S. defenses in the Middle East, with cheap drones prompting the Pentagon to roll out interceptor systems and lasers to protect troops. This is part of the rising threats in the region, though specifics on recent engagements aren't fully detailed. It's highlighting a shift toward asymmetric warfare that's hard to counter. Conservative sources like Fox News stress the urgency of U.S. tech upgrades to neutralize Iran's tactics, viewing innovations like lasers as crucial for safeguarding American interests. Broader media, including NPR, discuss the drone's cost-effectiveness as a wake-up call to Western military dominance, potentially dragging out conflicts. International perspectives raise ethical worries about an arms race, suggesting these defenses might deter attacks but could also spur more advanced Iranian countermeasures. A thoughtful question here is how effective these new defenses really are against low-cost drones and what risks they pose to civilians caught in the crossfire. The fallout from this war is spilling over into neighboring areas like Dubai, where expats are fleeing what was once seen as a tax-free paradise. The nearby conflict has shattered that image, with authorities prosecuting people for posting videos of missiles, leading residents to call the city finished and plan permanent exits. The economic ripple effects are still unfolding, but it's clear the war is disrupting lives far from the front lines. Tabloid reports from the Mail Online capture the expats' dashed dreams of safety and luxury, seeing the prosecutions as heavy-handed moves that speed up the exodus and tarnish Dubai's allure. International coverage ties this to how instability bleeds into neutral zones, affecting migration and economies, as noted in The Guardian. Conservative angles might see it as inevitable fallout from anti-Iran actions, while progressive ones spotlight human rights issues in the UAE's social media crackdowns. One question to consider is how this might reshape Dubai's economy and tourism in the long run, especially if similar issues hit other Gulf states. Staying in the region but shifting to a stark human rights story, an Afghan judge under Taliban rule rejected a woman's divorce plea despite her husband beating her with a cable, ruling that minor beatings are acceptable unless proven obscene. The woman, who has a disability, faced public humiliation in the process. Details on the case's final outcome are limited, but it's drawing attention to gender dynamics under the regime. Human rights outlets like The Guardian denounce this as a sign of regressive laws that normalize violence against women, calling for international pressure to reform protections for the vulnerable. Conservative perspectives might treat it as a cultural internal affair, warning against Western meddling that could unsettle the region further. Broader international reports use personal stories to underscore gender inequalities, suggesting these cases hinder women's rights progress and boost asylum demands. What's intriguing and troubling is how Taliban laws define acceptable violence in marriages and what international options exist for women in such situations. Next, over in the UK, Prime Minister Keir Starmer is under fire for appointing Peter Mandelson as ambassador despite warnings about his links to Jeffrey Epstein, with Labour insiders calling it a gutter issue that's sparking backlash. Junior ministers have been fielding the initial questions, and the controversy is highlighting vetting processes. Specific documents and resolutions aren't fully clear yet. Progressive critics inside Labour, as covered in the Mail Online, slam it as an ethical misstep that undermines trust, demanding more transparency. Centrist defenses might frame it as a vetting oversight amid Mandelson's expertise, focusing on his qualifications despite past ties. Conservative outlets are using it to question Starmer's judgment, portraying it as part of wider governmental ethical shortcomings. A key question is how this might erode Labour's credibility and whether there are growing calls for Mandelson's removal. Before we go, tomorrow watch for potential developments in Iran's drone tactics and U.S. countermeasures, as the Pentagon's innovations could shift the balance in this escalating conflict. That's OmniView. For full source links and more context, check out today's written briefing on the OmniView summaries page. As always, compare outlets, look for primary documents, and separate what's known from what's assumed. If balanced perspectives are valuable to you, share this with a friend and subscribe wherever you listen. See you tomorrow.
Without taking the dive, we went on vacation. We had a nice time. My doomsday is set for the 4th of July. They'll try